Frost clung to the mullioned windows of Ravenscroft Hall like crystallized secrets in the winter of 1847, transforming the Wiltshire estate into a fortress of ice and candlelight that smelled of pine boughs and beeswax and the faint metallic tang of snow about to fall. Seraphina Thornwood, known as Sarah to those who'd loved her before the world declared her dead, stood at the base of the grand staircase with her nephew Finian pressed against her burgundy silk skirts, his small hand gripping hers with a force that would leave marks. The gown she wore had cost every shilling she'd saved from 6 months of stitching ladies' gloves in a Hampshire farmhouse, and the weight of it felt like armor she desperately needed. In her reticule, hidden beneath gloves and a handkerchief, lay her sister Isolde's diary. She'd read the final entry so many times the words were burned into her memory. I am taking Finn and Sarah to London tomorrow. Mr. Thornton will finalize my will. After that, Uncle Malachi will have no claim. After that, we'll be safe, won't we? Isolde had written those words just hours before boarding the train that killed her. They hadn't been safe. They'd never been safe at all. Through the carved mahogany doors ahead, violins sang beneath the crystalline laughter of England's finest families. Yet in the marble entrance hall where she stood frozen, the December night seemed to hold its breath, as if the very air knew what was about to shatter. Sarah inhaled sharply. The cold burned down her throat like swallowing glass shards. But it was the memory of twisted railway iron and her sister's final scream that made her spine bend for one trembling heartbeat. She'd died in that crash, or so the Times had reported. So the mourners at her memorial had believed. So Cassian Ravenscroft, Duke of Ravenscroft, had grieved for 2 months before duty forced him to propose to another woman. Sarah straightened the collar of Finn's black velvet coat, her fingers shaking despite her efforts at composure. The boy was 7 now, old enough to understand danger, young enough to still have nightmares about the metal screaming and his mother's body shielding him from the flames. Is it beautiful in there? Finn whispered, his brown eyes, Isolde's eyes, reflecting the light of 100 candles beyond the doors. Sarah knelt, her skirts pooling around her like spilled wine. Yes, darling, very beautiful. But when she rose and placed both gloved hands against the cold wood, beautiful wasn't what awaited her. It was reckoning. Now, before Sarah pushes open those doors, before she walks back into a world that buried her 6 months ago, I need to ask you something. Where are you right now? Are you listening in your car, rain drumming on the windshield while you sit in a parking lot putting off going inside? Are you lying in bed at 2 a.m., phone screen the only light in the room, unable to sleep? Maybe you're doing dishes, or on a treadmill, or walking through your city with headphones shutting out the noise. Wherever you are, comment below and tell me. Where are you watching from? And what brought you to this story tonight? Because here's what I know about you. You're here because stories like this matter to you. Stories about women who refuse to stay erased. About children who survive impossible things. About justice finding monsters who thought power would protect them forever. Sarah is about to walk into that ballroom with nothing but her dead sister's diary and a 7-year-old boy who's counting on her to be brave. She's terrified. She's outnumbered. She's one woman against a conspiracy that's already murdered 37 people. But she's opening those doors anyway. If you want to see what happens when 200 aristocrats turn to stare at a ghost, when a duke who thought he buried the love of his life sees her standing there, alive and breathing and real, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because this story is hours long, and trust me, you don't want to miss a single moment. Turn on notifications. This is the kind of story that will consume your whole evening, and you'll thank me for it. So one more time, where are you? New York? London? Lagos? A small town nobody's heard of? Your childhood bedroom? A hospital waiting room? Comment below. And then let's watch together as Sarah walks through those doors and reclaims her life. She pushed the doors open. The ballroom unfurled before them like a living masterpiece. The great hall of Ravenscroft Hall, with its Adams ceiling painted in blues and golds, its Carrara marble columns rising like ancient sentinels, the massive Christmas tree standing at the far end beneath the musicians' gallery, its branches heavy with blown glass ornaments from Lasha and white hothouse roses. And the moment Seraphina Thornwood crossed that threshold, the collective breath of 200 souls stopped. A footman's tray slipped from his hands, crystal shattering against marble like a gunshot. A violinist's bow scraped across strings in a discord that made several women wince. Then nothing. Just silence spreading through the room like ink through water, cold and absolute. One by one, faces turned toward her. Sarah felt each stare land upon her skin like a physical touch. These people had attended her memorial service at St. Thomas's in Salisbury. Some had wept. All had whispered about the poor vicar's daughter who'd perished so tragically. Now here she stood, breathing, her pulse visible at her throat. Her heart hammered as she searched for the one face that haunted both her waking hours and her dreams. And then she found him. At the center of the ballroom stood Cassian Ravenscroft, Duke of Ravenscroft, Master of Ravenscroft Hall and 3 other estates spanning from Wiltshire to Scotland, 29 years old and carved from winter storms and old grief. His dark hair was ruthlessly styled, his evening coat cut by London's finest tailor, his posture that of a man born to command not just rooms but destinies. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath, silver gray like moonlight on water, like the river Avon under mist, like everything beautiful and cold and impossibly distant. Those eyes locked onto hers with a force that felt like drowning. For one suspended, crystalline moment, everything in him went perfectly, terribly still. His wine glass froze halfway to his lips. The muscle in his jaw stopped mid-clench. Even his breathing seemed to cease. Then something cracked behind that flawless ducal composure. Not visibly, not in any way the aristocrats around him would notice. But Sarah saw it. She had always been able to see past the armor Cassian wore. He recognized her. The woman whose death he'd investigated personally. The woman whose memorial service he'd funded and then broken down during. The woman he'd loved when love meant risking everything. And beside him, her gloved hand possessively curved around his forearm, her champagne silk-worth gown chosen to complement the Ravenscroft diamonds at her throat, stood Lady Rosalind Sinclair, daughter of Lord Aldrich Westmere, Earl of Westmere. 24 years old, beautiful as a January morning, cold as the frost on the windows. On Rosalind's left hand blazed a ring of diamonds and sapphires, the Ravenscroft betrothal ring. "Mama Sarah," Finn whispered, using the name that both honored his dead mother and shattered Sarah's heart every time. "That man is staring at us." Sarah forced her gaze down. "I know, sweet boy. That's the Duke. And we're here to tell him a truth he won't want to hear." She took one step forward, then another. Finn matched her pace, his small brave face set with determination no 7-year-old should need. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. 20 feet became 10. 10 became 5. Cassian handed his glass to someone and began walking toward them. Each footfall echoed against marble like a funeral drum. When he stopped before her, close enough that she could smell the sandalwood soap he still used, the entire ballroom contracted until nothing existed but the space between them. "Seraphina." His voice was low, controlled, but there was a faint tremor at its edge like ice cracking under weight. She lifted her chin. "Your Grace." He flinched. The title was now a wall between them. His gaze traced her face, the sharper cheekbones from 6 months of hunger, the faint scar at her temple where glass had cut her during the crash. Then his eyes dropped to Finn. Who was the boy? Sarah's hand tightened on Finn's shoulder. "My nephew. Isolde's son." The words fell between them like stones into still water. Cassian's jaw tightened. "Isolde, the sister who died in the Salisbury disaster. The same crash that killed you." Bitter emphasis on the last 2 words. "Or so we all believed. The crash tried to kill us all," Sarah said quietly. "It succeeded with Isolde. Finn and I were simply more fortunate than we deserved." Before Sarah could say more, a voice cut through the crowd like a blade finding flesh. "Cassian." Lady Rosalind Sinclair glided forward. She stopped at Cassian's side, her hand reclaiming its position on his arm with pointed deliberacy. "Who, precisely, is this woman?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sarah felt every eye boring into her back. The Dowager Countess of Pemberton, with her legendary memory for scandal, Lord Sheffield, who'd attended her memorial, Lady Constance Webb, who'd wept openly at the service. Sarah forced herself to curtsy. "Lady Rosalind." "Your Grace. I am Seraphina Thornwood." The gasp that rippled through the assembly was almost physical, a wave of sound that crashed against the atom ceiling. "The vicar's daughter," an elderly woman stage whispered. "The one who perished in the Salisbury disaster." "Impossible," someone else breathed. But Cashin said nothing. He simply stared at Sarah as though she were an apparition, his jaw working soundlessly, the muscle at his temple jumping. A tell she remembered from moments when his emotions threatened to overwhelm his iron control. That's impossible. Rosalind's voice sliced through the murmurs. Serafina Thornwood died 6 months ago. The railway confirmed it. The Times published her name. There was a memorial service. Her eyes cut to Cashin. You funded it yourself. I did. Cashin's voice was rough. I spoke at it. I broke down halfway through the eulogy. My mother had to lead me out of the church like a child. Sarah's throat constricted. She'd heard about the memorial. Mrs. Miller, the farmer's wife who'd hidden her, had shown her the notice in the Times, but she hadn't known about Cashin's breakdown. Then this woman is an imposter, Rosalind said sharply. Clearly someone seeking to exploit. No. The word cut through Rosalind's speech like a blade. Cashin's eyes finally left Sarah's face, sweeping over her with an intensity that felt like being stripped to bone. It's her. The certainty in his voice made Rosalind's hand drop from his arm. Cashin, you cannot possibly. There's a scar. Just above her right eyebrow. Shaped like a crescent moon. She got it when she was 12, climbing the oak behind the vicarage to rescue a cat that didn't need rescuing. His voice dropped. I was there. I caught her when she fell. Sarah's hand flew to the scar instinctively, though her hair covered it. You remember. I remember everything. Sir Harold Pemberton, Rosalind's uncle and the local magistrate, stepped forward. Your Grace, these are extraordinary claims. If this woman is indeed Miss Thornwood, there are legal implications. The boy's guardianship, Sir Harold continued, his gaze settling on Finn. If Mrs. Thornwood survived, and your sister named you guardian. She did, Sarah said quietly. We were traveling to London to finalize the documents when the memory choked her. Then you have a legal claim, but others may contest it. Cashin was watching her with those storm-silver eyes. You're lying about something. The accusation hung between them. Sarah felt Finn tense. Cashin, Rosalind's voice was urgent. Perhaps we should continue this in private. The guests can wait. Cashin didn't look at his fiancée. His focus was entirely on Sarah. Where have you been? It wasn't a question. It was a command. Sarah's hand tightened on Finn's shoulder. She thought of Isolde's diary hidden in her reticule, the entries documenting Uncle Malachi's threats, his desperation. She thought of the men who'd come to the Miller farm asking about survivors. She thought of her sister's final words. He'll come for Finn next. Don't let him. The Salisbury train disaster, Sarah said, her voice steady now, carved from stone and fury. It wasn't an accident. The ballroom erupted. Someone near the back actually shrieked. Someone sabotaged that train, Sarah continued, pitching her voice to Carrie. Someone tampered with the brakes. My sister didn't die by chance, Your Grace. She was murdered. And Finn is still in danger. Because the man who killed Isolde won't stop until he's dead too. Cashin had gone absolutely still. Who? It was Rosalind who answered, her voice sharp with understanding. The boy's uncle. If both mother and aunt died, he inherits, Sarah finished bitterly. Everything. Finn's entire trust. 20,000 pounds. She looked at Cashin. I'm not here to disrupt your life. I'm here because Finn needs protection, and I didn't know where else to turn. Cashin spoke, his voice carrying absolute authority. You'll stay here, both of you, until this is resolved. Cashin. Rosalind's voice was ice-wrapped in silk. Your wedding is in 3 weeks. To install your former acquaintance under your roof will create a scandal. Will pale. Cashin interrupted, finally looking at his fiancée. Compared to the scandal of turning away a woman and child who are being hunted. The exodus began with the rustle of silk. But it was Rosalind who held Sarah's attention. The Earl's daughter stood frozen, her composure shattered. I see, she said softly. I see what this is. Rosalind, Cashin started. She raised one gloved hand. How long? How long what? How long did you love her before I existed? Cashin answered quietly. Always. From the moment she smiled at me when we were 19. Rosalind's breath hitched. Then she pulled the Ravenscroft betrothal ring from her finger with deliberate care and set it on a nearby table. Then I release you from our engagement. I will not be the woman who stands between a man and his ghost. She swept from the ballroom, leaving behind only French perfume and glittering diamonds. In the ringing silence, Finn's voice broke through. Mama Sarah, did we do something wrong? No, darling. Sarah knelt beside him. Sometimes grown-ups make things complicated. Cashin knelt on Finn's other side. You did nothing wrong, Finn. We're going to keep you safe. I promise. Hours later, after Finn had been settled, after servants had been instructed and guards posted, Sarah stood at her window shaking apart. She didn't hear the door open. Only knew Cashin was there when his hand settled on her shoulder. You should be with Rosalind, she whispered. Rosalind's gone. She'll be fine. That doesn't make what we did to her right. No. But what was I supposed to do? Marry her while loving you. He turned her to face him. I've lost you once. I won't do it again. I'm not the same person. 6 months of hiding changes you. Then I'll learn to love who you've become. He cupped her face. Whatever you are now, I'll love her too. From the window, Sarah saw a figure move in the garden below. Just a shadow, quickly disappearing. Her hand found Cashin's wrist. Someone's out there. He moved to the window immediately. Where? Near the maze. They're gone now. Fear sharpened her throat. If Uncle Malachi knows I'm here, then he'll have to go through me. Cashin positioned himself between her and the night. And I promise you, Seraphina Thornwood, he will not succeed. Tomorrow they would start fighting back. Tonight, for the first time in 6 months, Sarah closed her eyes and trusted someone else would stand watch. The clock in Cashin's study struck 2 in the morning. He sat in the leather chair his father had died in, staring at the locked drawer that held the artifacts of his grief. His hand trembled as he fitted the key into the lock. Inside, a mourning brooch with SD engraved on the back, a pale blue ribbon she'd once worn, the Times clipping announcing the Salisbury disaster. And beneath it all, his journal, where he'd documented every desperate day of his search. He opened it almost against his will. Day 47. No trace. Question the station master at Basingstoke again. Still insists no red-haired women matching her description came through. Offered him £50 to check his records a third time. He thinks I'm mad. Perhaps I am. Cashin could still feel the rain at the crash site, still smell the smoke. He'd pulled aside debris until his hands bled. Day 53. Mother insists I stop. Says I'm becoming obsessed. But how can I stop when every fiber of my being screams this is wrong? Day 68. Attended her memorial today. Tried to give the eulogy. Made it 3 sentences before I couldn't breathe. Mother had to lead me out. Everyone thinks I'm losing my mind. He closed the journal. The man who'd written those entries felt like a stranger, raw, desperate, half-mad with grief. He reached deeper. His fingers found the velvet box he'd hidden 6 months ago. The ring inside was simple, a single sapphire the color of her eyes, set in gold. He'd commissioned it the day after his brother died, had planned to propose on November 2nd. The Salisbury disaster happened on November 1st. Footsteps in the garden pulled him from his memories. He met James Crawford, his investigator, by the stables. Your Grace. Crawford was a lean man with a scar across his cheek. I received your message. Mrs. Thornwood claims the Salisbury disaster was sabotage, Cashin said. Can you prove it? Crawford pulled out documents. The brake system failed catastrophically. Official report says mechanical failure. But look, he pointed to maintenance logs. Inspected 1 week before. Signed off as functional. So either fraudulent inspection or someone sabotaged them after. Crawford pulled out another document. I tracked down the engineer. Tom Fletcher. Currently in Devizes prison for embezzlement. His financial records show £500 deposited 2 weeks before the crash. From whom? Money trail leads to Malachi Grimwood, Mrs. Thornwood's uncle. The name hit Cashin like a fist. You're certain? As certain as I can be without Fletcher's confession. Which I can get. Do it. Whatever it costs. After Crawford left, Cashin stood trying to master his fury. Someone had murdered 37 people to kill 3. Someone was going to pay. The sound of a door made him turn. Rosalind stood there, still in her ball gown, eyes red. I thought I might find you here. Rosalind. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for loving someone else. She moved closer. I need to know something. Did you ever love me? He wanted to lie, but she'd asked for honesty. I cared for you. Respected you. I thought perhaps, in time, I could learn to love you. But no, I never stopped loving her. Rosalind's breath hitched, but she nodded. Thank you. For the truth. She turned to go, then paused. My uncle will investigate her claims. If what she says is true, justice will be done. But Cashin, she's going to destroy you. The scandal will be catastrophic. I know. And you don't care. Not even slightly. She smiled. sad and knowing. I hope she's worth it. Eventually, Cashin climbed to Sarah's room. Light burned under the door. He knocked. Come in. She stood at the window in a borrowed nightgown, hair loose, face wet with tears. I'm sorry. About Rosalind. About all of it. Don't be. He moved toward her. Sarah, I searched for you for 2 months. I spoke your name in my sleep. Do you really think I regret your survival? You should. I'm not the same person. Then I'll learn to love what you've become. He closed the distance. I'm not the same either. But you're here. Alive. And I don't care if you're different. A sound from the garden. A shout. Then the sharp crack of a pistol shot. They both froze. Cashin was moving instantly. Stay here. Lock the door. Another shot. Closer. Lock the door, he repeated. Don't open it for anyone but me. He ran down the stairs. His guards were clustered near the hedge maze, surrounding something on the ground. A man lay crumpled in the frost, blood spreading dark beneath him. Young, couldn't be more than 25, with rough-hewn hands and glazed eyes. He was trying to get to the house, a guard reported. We challenged him. He fired. We returned fire. Cashin knelt beside the wounded man. Who sent you? The man's laugh was wet, bloody. Go to hell. Who? Sent. You. The man's eyes flickered. Doesn't matter. You're all dead anyway. You just don't know it yet. What does that mean? But the man had found something in his pocket, a small vial. Before anyone could stop him, he bit down. The smell of bitter almonds filled the air. Cyanide. Cashin lunged forward, but it was too late. Foam appeared at the man's mouth. His body convulsed once, twice, then went still. In the terrible silence, Cashin became aware of Sarah standing behind him in her nightgown, Finn clutched against her side, both staring at the corpse. He was trying to get to us, Sarah whispered. Cashin rose slowly. Yes. Who was he? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. He turned to his guards. Search him. Send word to Crawford immediately. Because more would come. The assassin's words echoed. You're all dead anyway. Malachi Grimwood had made his opening move. Now it was Cashin's turn. Tomorrow they would start hunting the hunter. Tonight, they were alive. Together. Sarah couldn't sleep. The dead assassin's words echoed. You're all dead anyway. Mixing with older nightmares of metal screaming. She sat in the window seat watching dawn creep across Wiltshire, Finn curled against her side. The diary lay open in her lap, pages illuminated by first light. She'd been reading through it again, searching for clues. Tell me a story, Mama Sarah, Finn whispered, stirring. She smoothed his dark hair and began to speak, but her eyes remained on the diary entry from October 30th, the last thing Isolde had ever written. Tomorrow we board the 847 from Salisbury to Waterloo. Her sister had written. Mr. Thornton will finalize everything. The will, the guardianship papers. By tomorrow evening, Malachi will have no legal claim. I should feel relieved. Instead, I feel as though I'm standing at the edge of a cliff in fog, unable to see the drop, but knowing it's there. Sarah's voice caught as she continued reading silently. Sarah thinks I'm being dramatic. Perhaps I am. Perhaps this dread is nothing but a mother's paranoia. I pray that's all it is. But if I'm wrong, God forgive me. At least my son will have someone who loves him. At least Sarah will fight for him when I no longer can. Once upon a time, Sarah began aloud for Finn. There were two sisters who loved each other very much. But as she told the fairy tale version, her mind was 6 months away. The October rain had drummed against Isolde's cottage windows. Sarah had been helping pack when Isolde suddenly grabbed her hands. Serafina, Sarah, I need you to promise me something. You're using my full name. You only do that when you're terrified. Isolde pulled out her leather-bound diary and pressed it into Sarah's hands. Read this. After we get back from London, read every word. I've documented everything, every threat, every conversation. Sarah had tucked the diary into her traveling bag, not really believing. Not until 3 days later, when she'd woken in a farmer's barn with Isolde dead and the diary blood-stained beside her. And so the princess knew she had to be brave, Sarah continued for Finn. Finn's eyes fluttered open. Did the princess win? Sarah looked out at Cashin in the garden. Yes, darling. The princess found a knight to help her. And together, they won. She closed the diary carefully. These pages, Isolde's final words, were the weapon they'd used to destroy Malachi Grimwood. 6 months ago, November 1st, 1847. The morning had dawned clear and cold. They'd arrived at Salisbury station at 8:30. Sarah had held Finn's hand while Isolde purchased tickets. Then Isolde went rigid, her gaze fixed across the platform. Uncle Malachi, standing near the station master's office in a brown wool coat, watching them. "Get Finn on the train," Isolde whispered urgently. "Third-class carriage. Near the back." Sarah had taken Finn aboard, finding seats that smelled of coal smoke. Through the window, she'd watched Isolde approach Malachi. Watched them speak, Isolde's posture defensive, Malachi's gestures agitated. Then Isolde walked back and climbed aboard, though her hands shook. What did he want? To tell me I was making a mistake. Isolde pulled Finn into her lap. To give me one last chance. I told him to go to hell. The train lurched into motion at 8:49. For 20 minutes, everything was fine. Finn pressed his nose against the window. Isolde stared at nothing. The crash came without warning. The sound hit first, metal tearing, a shriek like nothing Sarah had ever heard. Then the lurch, violent enough to throw her against the wall. Blood filled her mouth. The carriage tilted, kept tilting. Finn was screaming. Isolde was screaming. Everyone was screaming. Finn. Isolde's voice cut through chaos. Under the seat, Sarah saw her sister grab Finn and shove him into the small space beneath the bench. Then Isolde threw herself on top of him, her body a shield. Isolde. Sarah reached for her. Then the carriage flipped. The impact was a sound beyond sound. Wood exploded into splinters. Glass became flying knives. Metal groaned and shrieked. Bodies were thrown like rag dolls. Something hit Sarah's head. The world went gray, then black, then gray in pulses. She was dimly aware of smoke and blood and coal oil leaking. The last thing she saw was Isolde's face, still covering Finn, her eyes meeting Sarah's. Her lips moved. "I love you. Take care of him." Then nothing. 3 days later, Sarah woke in a barn that smelled of hay and herbs. Her head felt split open. Gentle hands pushed her down. "Easy now." A woman's voice. "Mrs. Miller. My sister. There was a boy. The boy's here. Safe. Broken arm, but healing." Mrs. Miller's face swam into focus. But the woman. "I'm so sorry. She didn't make it." The words didn't make sense. "She died in the crash. She was covering the boy when they found them. Saved his life with her body." Isolde. "Gone. I have to tell people. I have to let them know I'm alive." But Mrs. Miller's expression stopped her. "Perhaps you shouldn't." "What do you mean?" "There's men asking about survivors," her husband John said. "Describing you and the boy. Offering money." John pulled out a sketch. Sarah's face. "They left this. Said they'd pay £20. That's 6 months' wages." "Who sent them?" "They left a name. Malachi Grimwood, Esquire. Address in Bath." And there it was. Uncle Malachi had sabotaged the train, had killed Isolde, and now he was hunting the survivors. The Miller farm became prison and sanctuary. Sarah worked as a seamstress under the name Mrs. Wade, earning pennies. Every coin went into a tin box. Finn healed slowly. The nightmares were worse the first month. He'd wake screaming for his mother. The men came back 4 times, each time with more money. The last time, they brought a detailed sketch. They'd hidden in the root cellar for 3 days. Then a letter arrived in March. "Dear Miss Thornwood, should this reach you, your sister's estate has been in probate. As her named executor and potential guardian to Master Finian, your presence is required. However, as you were declared deceased, complications have arisen. Your uncle, Mr. Malachi Grimwood, has petitioned for guardianship and control of his trust. The hearing is set for April 15th in London. If you wish to contest, you must present yourself. Your servant, Benedict Thornton, solicitor." Sarah read it 3 times, hands shaking. If she didn't appear, Malachi would win, and Finn would be dead within a year. "I have to go back," she told Mrs. Miller. "You'll be walking into a trap. Then I'll walk into it somewhere public." An idea formed. The Ravenscroft Christmas Ball, open to anyone of gentle birth. She saved every penny, commissioned the burgundy gown, practiced her entrance, and on December 10th, she'd walked into Ravenscroft Hall and back into Cashin's life. A knock made them jump. Cashin entered, exhausted but determined. Crawford sent word. "Tom Fletcher has agreed to confess. For a reduced sentence, he'll testify that Malachi Grimwood paid him to sabotage the train." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "He'll testify?" "In writing, signed and witnessed." Cashin's eyes were hard. "We'll have our proof within 2 days." Sarah clutched the diary tighter. "Then we have everything. Fletcher's confession, the financial records, and, she held up the leather-bound book, Isolde's own words. Every threat documented. Cashin took the diary gently, scanning pages. When he reached the final entry, his jaw tightened. After that, we'll be safe. Won't we? He read aloud. His eyes found Sarah's. She knew. She tried to protect you both. And she died for it, Sarah said quietly. But her words will make sure Malachi pays. Cashin closed the diary reverently. Then tomorrow, we use Isolde's own voice to destroy the man who killed her. Sarah pressed the diary to her chest. For Isolde. For Isolde. And for the 36 others who died with her. Outside, dawn broke. Somewhere in Bath, Malachi Grimwood was waking to the beginning of his last days of freedom. And in Sarah's hands, her sister's diary held all the evidence needed to ensure justice would come. Morning came with gray light, and a letter that made Sarah's blood run cold. Cashin read it aloud, his voice growing colder with each word. Your Grace, I understand a woman claiming to be my niece Seraphina has imposed herself upon your hospitality. I regret to inform you that my niece perished in a tragic railway accident. This woman is clearly an impostor seeking to exploit your kind nature. As Seraphina's closest living relative, I have legal authority to investigate this fraud. I shall call upon you tomorrow afternoon to unmask this charlatan. Yours in duty, Malachi Grimwood, Esquire. Sarah's vision swam. He knows I'm here. Someone at the ball told him. Cashin crumpled the letter. Or one of the servants. Crawford arrived within the hour, bringing news that changed everything. I went to Devise's prison this morning. Got Fletcher's confession. He spread papers across Cashin's desk. But there's more. Fletcher says the payment came through a London solicitor, Blackwood and Associates. I investigated. The firm doesn't exist. It's a shell company. Which means, Sarah asked. Malachi had a sophisticated partner. Someone with legal knowledge and significant resources. The words hung in the air like smoke. We need to see Sir Harold, Cashin said grimly. The magistrate. Present everything we have. But when Sarah suggested they ask Sir Harold directly, he was Rosalind's uncle. After all, Cashin's face hardened. No, Cashin, I won't go begging to the family of the woman I jilted. His voice was steel. We'll do this another way. Sarah stared at him. Your pride isn't worth Finn's life. My pride has nothing to do with. It has everything to do with it. Her voice rose. Finn could die because you're too proud to ask for help from the right people. They stared at each other across the desk, and for the first time since she'd returned, Sarah saw the flaw in him. The aristocratic pride that could cost them everything. Cashin turned and walked out. Sarah stood there trembling with fury and fear. Then she made a decision. If Cashin wouldn't swallow his pride, she would swallow hers. An hour later, Sarah stood at the door of the Sinclair townhouse in Bath, heart hammering. A butler led her to a drawing room where Rosalind sat surrounded by half-packed trunks. Rosalind looked up, and her expression went cold. Mrs. Thornwood, how dare you? I'm not here about Cashin, Sarah interrupted. I'm here because a child's life is at stake. Something in her voice made Rosalind pause. Sarah pulled out Isolde's diary with shaking hands. My sister documented everything. Every threat our uncle made. Every time he asked about Finn's inheritance. She knew he wanted us dead. Her voice cracked. She died protecting her son. And now I need help protecting him from the monster who killed her. She opened the diary to a page from early October and began to read aloud. October 3rd, 1847. Found Finn crying today. When I asked why, he said, Uncle Malachi told me bad things happen to boys who don't obey their elders. I asked what else Malachi said. Finn wouldn't answer, just clung to me. Whatever happened, it terrified him. Rosalind's face had gone pale. Sarah continued, her voice steady despite tears. I went to confront Malachi at his lodgings. He was drunk, mean drunk. Teaching the boy respect, he said. Since his father's not around to do it, I told him to never speak to my son again. He laughed. Your son, that's rich. We'll see who he belongs to soon enough. He was threatening a 4-year-old child, Sarah whispered. Planning to kill him. For money. Rosalind stood abruptly, moving to the window. When she spoke, her voice was thick. What do you need? Your uncle. The magistrate. Cashin is too proud to ask, but I'm not. Sir Harold could fast-track the investigation, issue a protection order, help us build the case before Malachi. Before he tries again, Rosalind finished quietly. She turned, and her eyes were wet. You destroyed my engagement, Mrs. Thornwood. You took the man I was going to marry. I know, and I'm sorry, but Finn didn't do that. He's just a little boy who lost his mother, and he's terrified, and Sarah's voice broke. I don't know how to keep him safe alone. Rosalind was quiet for a long moment. Then she rang for her maid. Have my carriage brought around, and send word to my uncle that I'm calling on him immediately. She looked at Sarah. I'll speak to him. For the child. Not for you. Not for Cashin. For that little boy who lost his mother. Thank you, Sarah whispered. Don't thank me yet. My uncle is thorough. He'll want to verify your identity beyond any doubt. The meeting with Sir Harold was grueling. He questioned Sarah for 3 hours, testing every detail of her identity. Her father's favorite scripture. Her mother's maiden name. The birthmark on her shoulder. Childhood memories only the real Serafino would know. When he finally spoke, his voice was grave. I'm satisfied you are who you claim to be, Mrs. Thornwood. And these accusations against your uncle are serious enough to warrant immediate investigation. He turned to Rosalind. You've done the right thing, bringing this to me. Rosalind nodded stiffly. Will you issue a protection order? Immediately. But Mrs. Thornwood, Sir Harold fixed Sarah with a hard look. Presenting this evidence publicly will paint a target on your back. The moment we move against Malachi Grimwood, he'll know you're alive. He'll know you're here. And if he's as dangerous as you claim, then we make sure he can't get anywhere near us, came Cashin's voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. Cashin stood there, travel-stained and furious, but his eyes when they found Sarah were full of something that might have been shame. You went to Rosalind, he said quietly. Yes. Behind my back. Because you were too proud to do it yourself. Sarah lifted her chin. And I'd do it again. Finn's life is more important than your pride, or my pride, or anyone's pride. Cashin crossed the room. You're right. I was wrong. He looked at Rosalind. Thank you. For helping them despite everything. Rosalind's smile was sad. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. That night, back at Ravenscroft Hall, Sarah was putting Finn to bed when the boy suddenly spoke. Mama Sarah? Yes, darling. I remember something. From the train station. Sarah's heart stopped. What do you remember? Uncle Malachi. He was talking to another man. Finn's face scrunched with concentration. A fancy man, with shiny buttons on his coat, and gray hair, and he walked with a cane. Sarah's breath caught. Are you sure? Yes. Mama Isolde saw them too. She pointed him out. She said, Finn's voice dropped to a whisper. She said we had to be careful of fancy men. Sarah ran to find Cashin and Crawford. When she told them what Finn remembered, Crawford's expression turned grim. Gray hair, cane, fancy coat with shiny buttons. That's specific enough to identify. He pulled out his notebook. I'll start checking records. See who Malachi associated with. Who might have the resources to fund. Wait. Cashin had gone very still. Shiny buttons. Military dress uniform has brass buttons. Or, his eyes widened. Ceremonial lord's coat. The kind worn by peers attending Parliament. The implication hung in the air. You think Malachi's partner is a lord? Sarah whispered. I think we need to find out exactly who was at Salisbury Station the day of that crash, Cashin said grimly. And we need to do it before Malachi realizes we know. But it was already too late. That night, as Sarah lay in bed listening to Finn's breathing, she heard it. The soft scrape of wood on wood. The window. Someone was opening the window. She sat bolt upright, mouth opening to scream, but the figure was already climbing through, dressed in black, face covered. Sarah screamed anyway, a sound of pure terror that brought Cashin crashing through the door seconds later. The intruder lunged for Finn. Cashin tackled him, and they went down in a tangle of limbs and fury. Sarah grabbed Finn and ran for the corner, shielding him with her body as the men fought. Cashin got the upper hand, pinning the intruder down, ripping off his mask. It was a young man, barely more than a boy, with frightened eyes and blood on his lips. Who sent you? Cashin demanded. The man spat blood. Withdraw your claims. Stop investigating, or the boy dies. And it won't be quick. Who? Sent. You. But the man had found something in his coat, a vial. Before anyone could stop him, he bit down. His whole body convulsed. White foam appeared at the corners of his mouth. Cashin tried to pry his jaw open, but it was too late. Cyanide. The assassin died on Sarah's bedroom floor, and written on a note clutched in his hand were 3 words. 3 days left. Morning broke cold and gray over Ravenscroft Hall. The household was in lockdown, guards at every door, every window. The dead assassin had been removed, but his message remained burned into Sarah's mind. 3 days. Cashin called a war council in his study. Sarah, Crawford, Benedict Thornton the solicitor, and to everyone's surprise, Rosalind. I came because my uncle asked me to, Rosalind said coolly when she saw the shocked faces. He thought I might be useful. She pulled documents from her bag. Sir Harold has issued the protection order. He's also fast-tracking the investigation. But, she looked at Sarah, he needs more evidence. Fletcher's confession isn't enough. We need to identify Malachi's partner. The man Finn saw at the station, Sarah said. Gray hair, cane, military buttons. Crawford spread papers across the desk. I've been digging. Malachi Grimwood has massive debts. He owes money to gambling houses, loan sharks, even legitimate banks. He's desperate. But the sophistication of this plot, the shell company, the legal maneuvering, the professional assassins, that requires resources he doesn't have. So someone else is funding him, Cashin said grimly. More than that. Crawford pulled out a railway schedule. The Salisbury line. Do you know who owns shares in the Salisbury Railway Company? The room went still. Several investors, Crawford continued. But in the weeks before the crash, one investor sold all his shares. Thousands of pounds worth. Then, in the weeks after the crash, when stock prices had plummeted, he bought them back at a fraction of the cost. Made a fortune. Who? Cashin's voice was dangerous. Crawford pulled out one final document. Lord Aldrich Westmere, Earl of Westmere. The name fell into the room like a stone into still water. Rosalind had gone absolutely white. No, my father wouldn't. He was at Salisbury Station the day of the crash, Crawford said quietly. I checked the records. He took the 7:30 train to London. Left an hour before the 8:47 that crashed. Rosalind stood abruptly, knocking over her chair. You're lying. I'm not. Crawford's voice was gentle. I'm sorry, Lady Rosalind. But your father made hundreds of thousands of pounds from that crash. And Finn saw him talking to Malachi that morning. Finn was 4 years old. Rosalind's voice cracked. He could be mistaken about. Gray hair, cane, fancy coat, Sarah said softly. That's your father, isn't it? Rosalind's face crumpled. She sank back into her chair, hands shaking. Oh God, she whispered. He was on his way to London. Business, he said. Railway business. Her eyes filled with tears. 37 people died. Children died. And my father. She couldn't finish. Cashin moved to her side, kneeling. Rosalind, I'm sorry. Don't. She pulled away from him. Don't apologize. This isn't. She stood, wiping her eyes. I need to think. I need to. We need you to testify, Crawford said bluntly. Everyone stared at him. If we go after Lord Aldrich Westmere without inside knowledge of his involvement, he'll bury us in lawyers and influence. But if his own daughter testifies, you want me to destroy my family. Rosalind's voice was hollow. I want justice for 37 dead, Crawford said, including a woman who died trying to save her son. The room fell silent. Rosalind looked at Sarah. You swear to me, on your sister's grave, that Finn truly saw my father with Malachi that morning. Sarah met her eyes. I swear it. On Isolde's grave. Rosalind was quiet for a long moment. Then she straightened her spine, lifted her chin. My father is in London. When does he return? Tomorrow, Crawford said. Then we have 1 day to build an airtight case. Rosalind's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. Because when I accuse him, he will use every weapon he has to destroy me. And I will not fail. She looked around the room. If we're doing this, if we're bringing down an earl for murder and stock manipulation, then we do it right. We do it so thoroughly that not even his title can save him. We need to pause here. Not because I want to interrupt the story. I know you're invested. I know you need to see what happens next. But because I need to tell you something that's been weighing on me. Right now, as you're listening to this, thousands of people are watching this same video. And do you know what most of them are doing? Nothing. They're listening. They're feeling things, shock at Rosalind's choice, anger at Lord Aldrich, hope that justice might actually come. They're experiencing this story just like you are. But when it ends, they'll close the video, move on, forget. And that's fine. I'm not judging them. I'm not judging you if that's what you're planning to do too. But here's what haunts me about that. Rosalind just chose to destroy her entire family for people she doesn't even know. She's about to walk into a courtroom and call her own father a murderer. Her mother will disown her. Half of society will turn their backs. She'll lose everything. For 37 strangers who died on a train. And I'm sitting here, behind this microphone, and I have to wonder. If she can sacrifice everything for strangers, can't you spend 5 seconds hitting a like button? I know how that sounds. I know it feels like I'm comparing apples and oranges, real sacrifice versus a YouTube metric. But hear me out. Every time someone likes this video, the algorithm shows it to more people. People who need this story. People who are fighting their own battles against monsters who think power protects them. People who need to see that courage looks like walking into rooms where you're not wanted and demanding justice anyway. Every time someone subscribes to this channel, they're saying, stories about women who refuse to stay erased matter to me. Stories about children surviving impossible things matter to me. Stories where the powerless defeat the powerful matter to me. And every time someone watches to the end without engaging, without liking, without commenting, without subscribing, they're saying, well, they're saying the opposite, aren't they? I spent weeks researching Victorian legal systems for this story. Weeks making sure the railway sabotage was technically accurate. Weeks crafting Isolde's diary entries so they'd feel real, so you'd cry when Sarah reads them in court. I did that because I believe these stories matter. Because I believe you deserve storytelling that respects your intelligence and your emotions. But I can't do this alone. The algorithm doesn't care how good this story is. It cares about engagement. And if you don't engage, if you just listen passively and then leave, then this video dies here. The hundreds of hours I put into it reach only the people who've already found it. And everyone else who needs to hear about Sarah and Isolde and Finn and Rosalind's incredible courage, they never get the chance. So I'm asking, not demanding, not begging, just asking, if this story has made you feel anything. If you've been angry at Malachi, heartbroken for Isolde, proud of Rosalind, terrified for Finn, then hit that like button right now. If you want to see how Finn's testimony destroys Malachi in court, if you want to watch Lord Aldrich's aristocratic composure shatter when he's sentenced to death, if you need to know that Sarah and Cassian get their happy ending, then subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you know someone who needs this story, someone who's fighting their own battle, someone who's been told they don't matter, someone who needs to believe that courage wins, then share this video with them. Because here's the truth I can't sugarcoat. Rosalind is about to lose everything for people she'll never meet. And I'm asking you for 5 seconds and a click. If that feels unfair to you, if that feels like too much to ask after I've given you this story for free, well, I guess that tells us something, doesn't it? But I don't think it is too much. I don't think you're the kind of person who takes without giving back. I think you're here because you care. Because stories about justice and courage matter to you. Because you want more of this in the world. So prove it. Hit the like button. Subscribe. Leave a comment. Even just one word. Even just an emoji. Something that tells the algorithm, this matters. Show this to more people. And then let's get back to the story. Let's watch Rosalind walk into that courtroom and do the impossible. Because she's about to testify against her father. And you need to see it. The rest of that day moved with terrible speed. Crawford sent word to constables at every port. Watch for Lord Aldrich Westmere. Cassian prepared to ride to Dover himself, unwilling to trust this to anyone else. But it was Sarah who made the discovery that would change everything. She'd been going through Isolde's belongings again, searching for anything they might have missed. At the bottom of a traveling case, tucked into a hidden pocket, she found a letter. It was addressed to Benedict Thornton, Isolde's solicitor. Unsealed. Never sent. Sarah's hands shook as she read. Dear Mr. Thornton, if you are reading this, I am dead. I have written this letter as insurance, to be sent to you only if something happens to me before I can finalize my will in person. My uncle, Malachi Grimwood, has been threatening me for weeks. But today I discovered something far worse. I saw him at the railway offices in Salisbury speaking with Lord Aldrich Westmere. I know Lord Westmere because he attended my late husband's funeral and offered condolences. They did not see me, but I heard them speaking of the train and insurance payouts and after the accident. Mr. Thornton, I believe they are planning to sabotage the Salisbury line. I have no proof. But if something happens to the 8:47 to Waterloo on November 1st, and if I am on that train, you will know it was no accident. Please protect my son. Please ensure my sister has guardianship. Please do not let these men get away with murder. Isolde Harrow. The letter was dated October 30th, one day before the crash. Sarah's vision blurred with tears. Her sister had known, had tried to leave evidence, had done everything she could to protect them from beyond the grave. Cashin, she whispered, and he was there instantly, reading over her shoulder. His face went hard as stone. She knew. She documented it all. This is what we needed, Crawford said, his voice tight with emotion. This connects Lord Aldrich directly. This is the evidence that will hang him. By evening, word came. Lord Aldrich Westmere had been spotted at Dover docks, attempting to board a ship to Calais. Cashin rowed through the night. When he arrived at dawn, he found the Earl on the gangplank, bags already loaded, clearly planning to flee England forever. Going somewhere, Lord Westmere? Cashin's voice cut through the morning air. The Earl turned, saw Cashin flanked by constables, and his face went gray. Your Grace, this is a misunderstanding. I'm simply fleeing the country. Cashin dismounted. Hours before you're to be arrested for conspiracy to commit murder? I don't know what lies that woman has been telling. Her name was Isolde Harrow. Cashin's voice dropped to something deadly quiet. And she left a letter, written the day before the crash, naming you specifically, describing your plot with Malachi Grimwood in detail. Lord Aldrich's face went from gray to white. You murdered 37 people. Cashin continued, moving closer. You sabotaged a passenger train so you could manipulate railway stocks. You killed a woman who was trying to protect her child. You traumatized a 7-year-old boy, and you thought your title would protect you. I didn't, Lord Aldrich started. Save it for the magistrate. Cashin nodded to the constables. Lord Aldrich Westmere, Earl of Westmere, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, financial fraud, and accessory to 37 counts of murder. The Earl lunged for the ship, but the constables grabbed him. As they clamped irons around his wrists, he began to shout. You don't understand. It was just business. Just stocks and railways and money. No one was supposed to actually die. Grimwood said it would just be delays, mechanical failure. I didn't know. You knew, Cashin said coldly. You knew and you did it anyway. Tell that to the families of the 37 people you killed. As they led Lord Aldrich away, he looked at Cashin one last time. You think this ends with me? His laugh was bitter. You have no idea how deep this goes. The railway companies, the insurance firms, A constable silenced him, but the words lingered. How deep does it go? Cashin rode back to Ravenscroft Hall with the Earl in custody, but a cold dread had settled in his chest. If Lord Aldrich was just one piece of a larger conspiracy, if there were others involved, others with power and resources, then this fight was far from over. When he arrived home, Sarah was waiting. He told her everything. 3 days, she said quietly. The message said 3 days. That's tomorrow. Then tomorrow we make sure Malachi Grimwood joins his partner in prison, Cashin said grimly. That night, guards surrounded the house. No one slept. And at dawn, they would go to war. The message had said 3 days. Today was day 3. Sarah woke before dawn, Isolde's diary pressed against her chest, where she'd fallen asleep reading it. The final entries haunted her, her sister's growing fear, her desperate attempts to document everything, her final prayer that someone would believe her. October 28, 1847. Isolde had written an increasingly frantic script. Malachi grows bolder. Today he brought documents, guardianship papers he wanted me to sign as a precaution. When I refused, his smile disappeared like sun behind storm clouds. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Isolde, he said. Accidents are terrible things. It would be such a shame if something happened and no proper arrangements had been made. Sarah traced her sister's handwriting with trembling fingers. These words would soon be read aloud in a courtroom, would be used as weapons, would finally give Isolde's death meaning. A knock at the door made her jump. It's me, came Cashin's voice. He entered carrying coffee that smelled like salvation. His face was haggard. He hadn't slept either. Crawford's back from Devizes. He's bringing Fletcher with him. Sarah's stomach clenched. Today, in an hour. Cashin sat on the edge of her bed, and the intimacy of it, him in her chambers, morning light, no pretense, made her throat tight. Sarah, you don't have to see him. I can take Fletcher's statement without you being there. No. Her voice was firm. I need to look him in the eye. I need him to see Finn and know what he did to a child. It won't be easy. Nothing about this has been easy. She met his gaze. But it's necessary. They met in Cashin's study. Sarah, Cashin, Crawford, and the man responsible for 37 deaths. Tom Fletcher looked like a ghost himself. Thin, hollow-eyed, coughing wetly into a handkerchief that came away spotted with blood. He wore prison clothes and iron shackles that rattled when he moved. When he saw Sarah, he flinched as though she'd struck him. "Mrs. Thornwood," he whispered. I never meant." "You took money to sabotage a train full of people," Sarah said, her voice cold as winter. "What did you think would happen?" Fletcher's face crumpled. He said it would just be a delay. Mechanical failure. Insurance payout. He said nobody would get hurt, just inconvenienced. His breath hitched. "I needed the money. My daughter, she was sick. Consumption. The doctor said she had months, maybe. £500 could have paid for treatments, specialists, maybe even." "Did it work?" Sarah asked. "Did your £500 of blood money save her?" Fletcher's eyes filled with tears. "She died anyway, 2 weeks after the crash. And I've had to live knowing," his voice broke, "knowing I killed all those people for nothing." The room was silent except for Fletcher's ragged breathing. "How did you do it?" Cashin asked, his voice carefully neutral. Fletcher pulled documents from a folder with shaking hands. "Break lines. I loosened them just enough that they'd fail under stress. Made it look like wear and tear, natural failure." He spread technical drawings across the desk. "Grimwood paid me £250 up front, £250 after. Told me which train, which day. Said make sure it happens between stations, not in the yard where it'd be investigated too carefully." "And Lord Aldrich Westmere?" Crawford prompted. "Never met him directly, but I saw him with Grimwood twice. Once at the railway offices in Salisbury, once at a tavern in Bath. Heard them talking about the plan and stock prices." Fletcher looked at Sarah. "I swear to God, ma'am, I thought it was just about money. Insurance fraud, stock manipulation. I didn't think people would die." "But they did die," Sarah said quietly. "My sister died. She threw herself over her son to protect him from the metal and glass you turned into weapons. She died terrified and in pain because you needed money." Fletcher was weeping openly now. I know, and I can't. There's no forgiveness for what I done. But if I can help you put them away, if I can testify and make sure Grimwood and that lord pay for what they made me do." He looked at her with desperate, red-rimmed eyes. "Can I at least do that? Can I at least try to do one good thing before I die?" Because he was dying. Sarah could see it now. The consumption that had taken his daughter was taking him too. He had months, maybe weeks. "You'll testify?" she asked. "Every word. Everything I know. I'll stand in that courtroom and tell them exactly what Grimwood and Westmere told me to do." Fletcher's hands shook. "And Mrs. Thornwood, I know you got no reason to. But, could you tell your boy I'm sorry? Could you tell him his mama was brave and good and she died protecting him?" Sarah's eyes burned. "He knows. I tell him every day." After Fletcher was taken back to his cell under guard, Sarah stood at the window, trying to breathe past the tightness in her chest. Cashin came to stand beside her. "Are you all right?" "I don't know." Her voice was barely audible. "He's dying anyway. His daughter died. He did this terrible thing for nothing. And now he'll die in prison knowing he failed everyone." She looked at Cashin. "Am I terrible for thinking that's fitting? That justice looks like him dying alone and haunted. You're human." Cashin took her hand. "And he helped murder your sister. You're allowed to feel however you feel." That afternoon, Benedict Thornton arrived with his leather case full of legal documents. "The trial is set for 3 days from now," he announced. "Sir Harold has agreed to preside personally. We'll present Fletcher's confession, Isolde's diary, the financial records, and Finn's testimony." 3 days, Sarah repeated. "The deadline. The threat. Which is why we're moving you to the East Wing tonight," Cashin said firmly. "The rooms there are more defensible. Stone walls. Only one entrance. Guards posted outside. You think they'll try again? I think they're desperate. And desperate men do desperate things." That evening, Cashin found Sarah in the library trying to read, but mostly staring at the fire. He sat beside her, and for a long moment neither spoke. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. Sarah's breath caught. "I had this made 6 months ago," Cashin said quietly. "Before the crash. I was going to propose on November 2nd. Had the whole speech planned." He opened the box to reveal a ring, a single sapphire the color of deep water, set in gold that glowed like captured sunlight. Then you died. Or I thought you did. And this ring has been in my desk drawer ever since, because I couldn't bear to look at it, but couldn't bear to get rid of it either. Sarah stared at the ring, tears blurring her vision. I'm not proposing, Cashin continued. Not yet. Not while we're in the middle of this. But I want you to have it. So you know. He took her right hand, his touch gentle. This is how I felt then. This is how I feel now. You were always the only choice, Sarah. From the moment you smiled at me when we were 19. And when this is over, when Finn is safe and Malachi is in prison and you've had time to breathe, I'm going to ask you properly. With the speech and everything. He slipped the ring onto her right hand. It fit perfectly. Until then, he said softly, wear this and know you're not alone. You're not fighting this battle by yourself. And whatever happens, I'm here. Sarah looked at the ring through tears, then at the man who'd searched for her, mourned her, waited for her. Cashin, you don't have to say anything. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Just wear the ring. That's enough. But it wasn't enough for Sarah. She turned her hand in his, laced their fingers together, felt the solid reality of him. When this is over, she whispered. When Finn is safe. Ask me then. And you'll say yes? I'll say yes. The kiss was soft and brief and full of promises neither could speak yet. When they pulled apart, Sarah rested her head on his shoulder, and they sat by the fire until the coals burned low, the ring on her finger catching the dying light like a beacon. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Thornton coached Sarah on courtroom testimony. Crawford drilled Finn on what to expect, how to answer questions, how to stay calm even when facing Uncle Malachi. Rosalind appeared each morning and left each evening, her face growing more drawn. Her mother had disowned her publicly. Half of society was scandalized. But she came anyway, helping organize evidence, reviewing testimony, preparing to destroy her father. On the second evening, as Rosalind was leaving, Sarah caught her in the hallway. Thank you, Sarah said simply, for everything you're sacrificing. Rosalind's smile was sad. I'm not sacrificing anything that matters. My father killed 37 people. My family's honor was gone the moment he did that. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. Still, it can't be easy. No. Rosalind looked at Sarah for a long moment. But you know what's strange? I feel lighter. Like I've been carrying something heavy my whole life, and I just set it down. She touched Sarah's arm briefly. Make him happy. Cashin. He's a good man, even if he's a fool for you. Then she was gone, leaving Sarah standing in the hallway with tears on her cheeks. The night before the trial, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat with Finn in his room, reading from Isolde's diary, not the dark entries, but the early ones full of love and hope and everyday joy. June 3rd, 1846. Finn said his first full sentence today. Mama, look at Bird. I cried like a fool. Edmund says I'm being dramatic, but how can I not weep when my son is becoming a whole person with words and thoughts and opinions? Sarah came for tea, and we laughed until we couldn't breathe. I am so blessed. So impossibly blessed. Finn listened with solemn attention. Was Mama Isolde happy? Very happy, Sarah said, her voice thick. She loved you more than anything in the world. Will I have to talk about her tomorrow? In front of people? Yes, darling. The magistrate will ask you questions about what you remember. What if I get scared? Sarah pulled him close. Then you look at me. I'll be right there. And if you need to stop, you can stop. But Finn, she tilted his chin up so he'd meet her eyes. You're so brave. Braver than anyone I know. And your mama would be so proud of you. I'll try not to cry. You can cry if you need to. Crying is brave too. After she put Finn to bed, Sarah found Cashin in his study, staring at papers he wasn't reading. Can't sleep either? She asked. He looked up, and his eyes were haunted. I keep thinking, what if it's not enough? What if they have lawyers who tear apart Fletcher's testimony? What if the jury doesn't believe a 7-year-old boy? Then we'll appeal. We'll keep fighting. For how long? His voice was raw. How long can we keep Finn safe? How long before Malachi finds another assassin, another way? Sarah crossed to him, took his face in her hands. Tomorrow we win. We have Fletcher's confession, Isolde's diary, the financial records, Finn's testimony, Rosalind's testimony. We have everything we need. Sarah, tomorrow we win, she repeated firmly. And Malachi Grimwood and Lord Aldrich Westmere spend the rest of their lives paying for what they did. Believe that. Because I need you to believe it. He pulled her into his arms, buried his face in her hair. I'm terrified of losing you again. You won't. I promise. You can't promise that. Then I'll promise this instead. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. They stood there until dawn began to break, holding each other against the fear. And then it was time. The trial was about to begin. The Salisbury courthouse smelled of old wood and older sins, of generations of justice and injustice handed down from the bench. Sarah sat in the front row with Finn pressed against her side, Cashin on her other side close enough that their shoulders touched. The sapphire ring on her right hand caught morning light streaming through high windows, throwing blue shadows across her lap. Across the aisle, Malachi Grimwood sat in chains, and the hatred in his eyes when he looked at her was almost physical. Beside him, Lord Aldrich Westmere sat in fine clothes, but equally bound, his face a mask of aristocratic fury that he'd been reduced to this, sitting beside a commoner, accused like a common criminal. The gallery was packed. News of the case had spread like wildfire. A presumed dead woman, a murdered sister, a duke breaking his engagement, an earl accused of mass murder, and enough scandal to feed gossip for years. Every seat was filled, people standing against the walls, craning to see. Sarah felt every eye on her back like pinpricks. Sir Harold Pemberton entered, and the murmuring stopped. He took his seat behind the bench, his face grave as stone. We are here to examine accusations of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, fraud, and stock manipulation resulting in 37 deaths. Mr. Thornton, you may begin. Thornton stood, precise and methodical in his black robes. We accuse Malachi Grimwood and Lord Aldrich Westmere of conspiring to sabotage the Salisbury to Waterloo train on November 1st, 1847, resulting in the deaths of 37 passengers, including Mrs. Isolde Harrow. We further accuse Mr. Grimwood of subsequently hiring assassins to murder survivors. We have evidence. He laid it out piece by piece. Fletcher's signed confession, the financial records showing payments to T. Fletcher, Isolde's diary with its documented threats, the railway stock manipulation, the unsent letter naming Lord Aldrich specifically. The courtroom gasped and whispered with each revelation. Malachi's solicitor, a thin, weaselly man named Blackwell, objected repeatedly, called it fabrication, insisted his client was being persecuted by an opportunistic woman and a lovesick duke. But Thornton pressed on, relentless as winter. Mrs. Thornwood, please take the stand. Sarah's legs felt weak as she stood. She made herself walk steadily to the witness box, made herself sit without trembling, made herself look at the crowd without flinching. State your name for the record. Seraphina Margaret Thornwood, daughter of Reverend Thomas Thornwood. And you are the same Seraphina Thornwood who was declared dead 6 months ago? I am. Blackwell leaned forward. How convenient that you return now, when a fortune hangs in the balance. I return because my nephew's life is in danger. Sarah pointed at Malachi, her voice steady. From that man, my uncle, who murdered my sister for money. Can you prove you are who you claim to be? She could. She recited every detail. Her mother's maiden name, Ashworth. Her father's favored him, be thou my vision. The birthmark on her left shoulder shaped like a dove. The childhood cat named Whiskers who died when she was 10. She described the vicarage room by room, named villagers who'd known her since birth, produced letters in her own handwriting. Sir Harold nodded, satisfied. The court accepts Mrs. Thornwood's identity. Then Sarah told her story. The crash, the barn, the 6 months in hiding. She pulled out Isolde's diary, the real evidence, the weapon they'd been waiting for, and began to read in a voice that shook but didn't break. September 12, 1847. I saw Malachi at church today. He was sober for once, which somehow made him more frightening. After services, he cornered me by the Lych gate. Your father left you well provided for, he said. Too well, perhaps. Money like that can be a burden. Wouldn't you prefer someone experienced to manage it for you? I told him I was perfectly capable. He smiled. Capability isn't the issue, Isolde. Capability won't protect you from accidents. Then he walked away whistling. The courtroom sat in absolute silence. Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger with each entry. October 3rd, 1847. Found Finn crying today. When I asked why, he said, Uncle Malachi told me bad things happen to boys who don't obey their elders. I asked what else Malachi said. Finn wouldn't answer, just clung to me. Whatever happened, it terrified him. She heard someone in the gallery gasp. Kept reading. October 15th, 1847. I dreamed last night that I was drowning, and when I woke, the feeling didn't leave. Uncle Malachi came again today, asking about Finn's trust. His hands shook. From drink or desperation, I couldn't tell. He said, accidents happen, Isolde, even to the most careful among us. I've begun to sleep with a knife under my pillow. Am I mad? Or am I the only one who sees the monster he's becoming? Sarah looked up from the diary to find tears on multiple faces in the gallery. Even Sir Harold's eyes were damp. She read 3 more entries, building the pattern of threats, the escalating fear, the desperate attempt to document everything. Then she reached the final entry, the one written just hours before Isolde boarded the train. Her voice finally broke. October 30th, 1847, 11 p.m. Tomorrow we board the 847 from Salisbury to Waterloo. Mr. Thornton will finalize everything. The will, the guardianship papers, the trust arrangements. By tomorrow evening, Malachi will have no legal claim to Finn or his inheritance. I should feel relieved. Instead, I feel as though I'm standing at the edge of a cliff in fog, unable to see the drop, but knowing it's there. Sarah thinks I'm being dramatic. Perhaps I am. Perhaps this dread is nothing but a mother's paranoia. I pray that's all it is. But if I'm wrong, God forgive me. If I'm wrong, at least my son will have someone who loves him. At least Sarah will fight for him when I no longer can. Sarah closed the diary with trembling hands. The courtroom was utterly silent except for the sound of people weeping. My sister knew, Sarah said, her voice raw. She documented everything. She tried to protect us. And she died anyway. Died terrified and in pain, using her last moments to shield her son's body with her own. She looked at Malachi. You did that. You looked at your own family and decided we were worth less than money. Malachi was sweating now, his face red, but he said nothing. Next came Tom Fletcher's confession, read aloud by Crawford. The sabotage instructions, the payment schedule, Malachi's assurance that nobody would get hurt, just delays and insurance payouts. Fletcher's remorse poured from every line. Then Crawford took the stand himself, presenting the financial evidence, the shell company, the payments to Fletcher, the railway stock manipulation showing Lord Aldrich selling before the crash and buying back after. Lord Westmere made £375,000 from this tragedy, Crawford said coldly. He turned 37 deaths into the biggest profit of his career. Lord Aldrich shot to his feet. This is preposterous. I'm a peer of the realm. I sit in the House of Lords. I won't be tried like some common. Sit down. Sir Harold's voice cracked like a whip. You'll address this court with respect, or you'll be gagged. The Earl sat, shaking with rage. Then Cashin took the stand, presenting the unsent letter, Isolde's final attempt to protect her family from beyond the grave. He read it in a voice tight with controlled fury, and when he reached the part where Isolde wrote, I believe they are planning to sabotage the Salisbury line. Multiple people in the gallery cried out. She knew. Cashin said, looking directly at Lord Aldrich. She saw you with Malachi at the railway offices. She heard you discussing the train and insurance payouts. She tried to leave evidence. And you killed her anyway. I never. Lord Aldrich started. You never what? Cashin's voice turned dangerous. Never planned for anyone to die? Never thought about the consequences? Or never expected to get caught? Blackwell objected, but the damage was done. Then Sir Harold did something unexpected. I'd like to hear from the boy. Protests erupted from both defense tables, but Sir Harold raised his hand. He's old enough to answer simple questions. And he's the victim here. He deserves to be heard. Finn looked terrified as Sarah helped him into the witness box. He was so small the bailiff had to find him a cushion to sit on. Sarah wanted to run to him, to shield him, but she forced herself to stay seated, to trust that he was brave enough. Sir Harold's voice gentled. Hello, Finn. Do you know why you're here? To tell the truth about what happened. Finn's voice was barely audible. Good. That's exactly right. Sir Harold smiled. Now, do you see your Uncle Malachi in this room? Finn nodded, his eyes finding Malachi. He's right there. Did your mother ever talk about him? She said he was mean. She said if anything happened to her, I should stay away from him. Did she say why? She said he wanted to hurt us. To take our money. Malachi's solicitor stood. The boy's been coached, but Finn wasn't finished. His voice suddenly rose, stronger, certain. "You were at the station. The day of the crash. I saw you." The courtroom exploded. Sir Harold's gavel cracked like gunfire, but the noise continued. "That's a lie," Malachi shouted, half rising from his seat. "You were wearing a brown coat," Finn continued, the words tumbling out now. "And you were talking to the fancy man with gray hair and a cane. Mama pointed you both out. She said we had to be careful." Cashin was already conferring urgently with Crawford and Thornton. Sir Harold called for recess. The next 2 hours were frantic investigation. The station master's logs showed Malachi had indeed purchased a ticket that day, but never boarded. 2 witnesses, a porter named Jacob Mills and a ticket seller named Sarah Wright, remembered seeing him on the platform, agitated, watching the train. And they remembered the gentleman with him, gray-haired, walking with a cane, wearing a lord's coat with brass buttons. Lord Aldrich Westmere. When court reconvened, the evidence was overwhelming. Then Rosalind took the stand. The gallery gasped when she stood. Everyone knew who she was. The Earl's daughter, Cashin's former fiancée, society beauty. And here she was, about to testify against her own father. "Lady Rosalind," Thornton said gently, "you understand what you're about to do?" "I do." Her voice was steady despite the tears on her face. "And you're willing to proceed?" "I am." "Then please tell the court. Did your father travel to Salisbury on November 1st, 1847? "He did. He said he had railway business in London." "What kind of railway business?" "He owned shares in the Salisbury Railway Company. Thousands of pounds worth." Rosalind's hands were shaking. "He left that morning on an early train. When he returned that evening and heard about the crash, her voice broke. "He poured himself a brandy and said, 'Tragic, but these things happen.' Then he went to his study and spent hours on correspondence. I thought he was writing condolence letters. I didn't know." She looked at her father. "I didn't know he was calculating his profits." Lord Aldrich was on his feet again. "Rosalind, don't do this. Don't throw away your family for these people." "You threw away our family," Rosalind said quietly, "when you murdered 37 people for railway stocks." "I didn't murder anyone. It was supposed to be a delay. A mechanical failure. Insurance would have covered everything. Grimwood swore nobody would." He stopped, realizing what he'd said. The courtroom erupted again. Lord Aldrich had just confessed, not to murder, but to conspiracy, to planning the sabotage, to working with Malachi. His own solicitor tried to silence him, but it was too late. "You don't understand." Lord Aldrich shouted over the chaos. "It was just business. Just stocks and railways and money. No one was supposed to actually die. Grimwood said it would just be delays, some broken equipment, insurance payouts. 37 people died." Sir Harold's voice cut through like ice. "Including children. Including a woman trying to protect her son. And you call it business?" Lord Aldrich seemed to deflate. He sat heavily, face gray. Then Malachi made his own mistake. "It's not my fault," he burst out. "I didn't want to kill anyone. Just the boy. The inheritance would have gone to Sarah, then to me when she—" He stopped, eyes widening. Dead silence. "When she what?" Sir Harold prompted, his voice deadly quiet. Malachi's face went from red to white. He'd just admitted planning to kill not only Finn, but Sarah too. His solicitor dropped his head into his hands. Sarah stood. She didn't ask permission, didn't wait to be called. She simply stood and walked to the front of the courtroom, Isolde's diary in her hands. "My sister died believing her son would be safe," she said, her voice ringing clear. "She used her last moments to shield him from men like you." She looked at Malachi. "You're my blood. My uncle. You should have protected us. Instead, you killed her." Then she looked at Lord Aldrich. "And you killed 37 people for money. For railway stocks. You sat in the House of Lords and made laws while planning mass murder." She opened the diary one last time, to the final entry, and read it again. Isolde's last words, full of hope and fear and love. "I don't want vengeance," Sarah said when she finished. "I want justice. For Isolde. For the 36 others. For every family that lost someone that day because 2 men valued money more than life." The jury deliberated for 37 minutes. 1 minute for each person who died. When they returned, the foreman stood. "We find the defendants guilty on all counts." The courtroom erupted in cheers and sobs and gasps. Sir Harold's gavel cracked. "Order." When silence finally fell, he looked at the 2 men in chains. You have committed crimes so heinous, so calculated, that mercy would be a mockery of justice. Malachi Grimwood, you are sentenced to 25 years transportation to Australia. Lord Aldrich Westmere, he paused. Despite your title, despite your station, you will be treated as any other murderer. You are sentenced to death by hanging. Lord Aldrich screamed, had to be dragged from the courtroom by constables. Malachi just slumped in his seat, broken. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Some cheered, some booed. Sarah held Finn tight, both crying. Cashin surrounded them with guards, ushering them toward the carriage. As they climbed in, Sarah saw Rosalind standing alone in the crowd, her mother nowhere to be seen, half of society's eyes on her with judgment. Their eyes met across the distance. Rosalind nodded once, acknowledgement, respect, goodbye. Sarah nodded back. Then the carriage pulled away, taking them home. It's over, Finn whispered. Is it really over? It's over, sweet boy. Sarah held him close. You're safe now. But as they rode through the streets of Salisbury, as people pointed and whispered and the weight of what they'd done settled over her, Sarah realized this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. 3 weeks after the trial, Ravenscroft Hall felt like a house learning to breathe again. The guards remained, but the tension had shifted from terror to vigilance. Malachi was aboard a ship bound for Australia. Lord Aldrich had been executed at dawn 2 days ago, his title stripped, his estates seized by the crown. Finn's inheritance was secure. Isolde's name was cleared. Justice had been served. But Sarah found herself unable to settle. She stood at the window of what had become her permanent chambers, no longer the East Wing, but proper rooms befitting a future duchess, watching snow fall over gardens that felt like home now. Letters arrived by the dozens, half congratulatory, praising Cashin's justice and courage, celebrating Sarah's bravery, half condemning the scandal of a broken engagement, the impropriety of housing his mistress under his roof, the spectacle of a duke entangled with a vicar's daughter. Sarah read one particularly vicious note from Lady Pemberton and felt her stomach turn. Mother says the gossip will continue for months, Cashin said from the doorway. She hadn't heard him enter. Years, more like. Sarah set down the letter. Some doors will close to us. To me, you mean? She turned to face him. You could still salvage this, Cashin. Send me away quietly. Restore your reputation. No. The word was flat, final. I'm not sending you away. And I'm done pretending society's opinion matters more than this. He gestured between them. But Finn deserves stability. Then let's give him some. Cashin crossed the room and took her hands. Marry me. Sarah's breath caught. Cashin, I know it's too soon. I know people will say you're a fortune hunter, that I'm bewitched, that we're scandalous and improper. I know Isolde's only been gone 7 months and proper mourning hasn't been observed. His voice was urgent, almost desperate. But I've already lost you once. I spent 6 months being half alive. Then Rosalind came and I was going to do the dutiful thing, and I was miserable. Then you walked back into my life, and his voice cracked. I realized I'd rather be scandalous with you than respectable with anyone else. Cashin, not today, he said quickly. Not this month. But when the time is right, when Finn is ready, when you're ready, marry me. Be my duchess. Let's be a family. The 3 of us. Sarah looked at the ring already on her finger, the sapphire he'd given her, glowing like captured starlight. She looked at this man who'd searched for her, mourned her, chosen her despite everything. Yes, she whispered. When the time is right. When Finn is ready. Yes. He pulled her into his arms and held her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. I hope you know what you're agreeing to. Society will talk. Some will cut us. Let them. Sarah pressed her face against his chest. I've been dead for 6 months. I know what matters now. They told Finn that afternoon, in the library where late autumn sun streamed through tall windows. The boy looked between them with such hope it hurt. Does this mean you'll be my new papa? He asked Cashin. If you'll have me. Cashin's voice was thick. Finn threw himself at Cashin's legs, clinging tight. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. They would wait, they decided. A quiet wedding in spring, after proper mourning. Finn would be officially adopted. Sarah would gradually reclaim her social standing with Cashin's support. That evening, a letter arrived. Sarah recognized Rosalind's elegant handwriting. Mrs. Thornwood, I won't pretend to like you. You've taken something I wanted, even if I didn't truly love it. But I won't pretend Cashin was ever really mine, either. He was always yours. He just didn't know it yet. Or perhaps I didn't want to see it. I'm leaving for Scotland next week. My mother's family has agreed to take me in, though the scandal has branded me there too. Perhaps that's fitting. Perhaps we all need to start over somewhere. Make him happy. He's a better man than most, even if he's a fool for you. And Mrs. Thornwood? Thank you for showing me that courage looks like choosing truth even when it costs everything. I learned something after all. I hope you make each other extraordinarily happy. You've certainly made each other extraordinarily complicated. With regards, I never expected to feel, Rosalind Sinclair. Sarah showed it to Cashin. His expression softened with something that might have been regret or relief. She's more gracious than I gave her credit for, he said. She's in pain. I know. I regret that. But you don't regret choosing me. Never. That night, Sarah wore the ring on her left hand for the first time. Still not the wedding band, but a promise of one. She and Cashin stood on the balcony where so much had happened, watching snow fall over Wiltshire. No regrets, he asked. Only that we lost 6 months. That Isolde isn't here to see this. Then let's not waste another moment. He turned her to face him. And let's make sure Isolde's memory lives on in a way that matters. What do you mean? I've been thinking. Cashin pulled papers from his pocket. Finn's trust is substantial. But there's also money from the settlements, both Malachi's seized assets and the damages awarded from Lord Aldrich's estate. I want to do something with it. Something Isolde would have loved. He handed her the papers. Plans for a school. For girls. In Salisbury. With teachers, curriculum, scholarships. The Isolde Harrow Memorial Academy. Sarah read, her vision blurring with tears. For the education of young women regardless of social station. She saved you, Cashin said quietly. Which means she saved me. I want her remembered. Not as a victim. As someone who believed girls deserved better. Sarah couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. They would open the school in spring, Cashin explained. Start with 20 girls. Grow from there. Make sure Isolde's name meant something more than tragedy. That night, they stood on the balcony until the stars came out, until Finn called for them to come say goodnight, until the cold drove them inside to warmth and firelight and tomorrow. And Sarah realized, grief didn't end, but it could transform into something beautiful if you let it. 3 months later, spring arrived at Ravenscroft Hall with a fury of blooming flowers and birdsong that felt like the world waking from a long nightmare. Sarah stood in her chambers, now officially hers, her belongings unpacked, her clothes in the wardrobe, as though she'd always belonged here, and watched as the Dowager Duchess helped adjust her wedding dress. You're beautiful, my dear, Cashin's mother said, stepping back to admire her work. The dress was cream silk, elegant and understated, with lace at the throat and wrists. Not the grand affair Rosalind would have worn, but perfect for Sarah. Pearl buttons ran down the back. The sapphire ring glinted on her finger, soon to be joined by a wedding band. I'm nervous, Sarah admitted. So was I. The Duchess smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it. Somewhere over the past months, she'd stopped seeing Sarah as a complication and started seeing her as family. But some men are worth the nerves. A knock announced Benedict Thornton, impeccably dressed and carrying his leather case. Mrs. Thornwood, I thought you'd want to know. The final legal matters are concluded. Finn's guardianship is permanent and unchallenged. The trust is secure. And, he allowed himself a small smile, the Isolde Harrow Memorial Academy officially opens next month. 23 girls enrolled. Sarah's eyes filled. 23. Word spread. Families from all over Wiltshire applied. Thornton's expression softened. Your sister's legacy is going to change lives, Mrs. Thornwood. When he left, Sarah stood at the window looking down at the gardens where guests were gathering. Perhaps 50 people, only those who truly mattered. Some of society had turned their backs, but others had proven surprisingly accepting. The scandal had faded to mere gossip, and gossip eventually died. In another room, Cashin was struggling with his cravat. His friend Lord Hastings watched with amusement. You're sure about this? Hastings asked, not for the first time. I've never been more sure of anything. The vicar's daughter. The woman I love. Hastings laughed. Fair enough. Just know you're setting a dangerous precedent. If dukes can marry for love, what hope do the rest of us have of doing our duty? You'll manage, Cashin said, finally getting the cravat right. The chapel at Ravenscroft was small, intimate, perfect. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting the stone floor in colors. Finn stood at the front in his best suit, holding the rings on a velvet cushion, his face serious with the weight of his responsibility. When Sarah entered on Sir Harold's arm, he'd agreed to give her away after some persuasion. The assembled guests turned. She saw Cashin at the altar and forgot to be nervous. He was watching her with an expression that said she was the only person in the world. The vicar began the ceremony, and Sarah barely heard the words. She was too focused on Cashin's hands holding hers, on the steadiness of his voice when he spoke his vows. Who gives this woman to be married to this man? Finn stepped forward, very serious. I do. My mother would have wanted this. There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel. When it came time for the rings, Finn presented them with such care that Sarah's tears finally fell. Cashin slid the band onto her finger, next to the sapphire, and she did the same for him, hands shaking. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The kiss was tender and deep and full of promise. When they parted, Sarah was smiling through her tears, and Cashin looked like a man who'd finally come home. The reception was held in the gardens. Spring flowers bloomed everywhere, daffodils and tulips, and early roses. Tables were laid with simple elegance. Some of society's more rigid members had declined the invitation, but those who came seemed genuinely happy. Sarah and Cashin danced, and she forgot about the whispers and the judgment and the scandal. She was the Duchess of Ravenscroft now. She was Finn's mother. She was Cashin's wife. And if some doors had closed, others had opened. Finn cut in on their dance with all the confidence of a child who knew he was loved. My turn to dance with Mama Sarah. Sarah laughed and took his hands, letting him lead her in a clumsy waltz while Cashin watched with such contentment it made her chest ache. Later, as the sun began to set, Cashin presented her with gifts. First, Isolde's diary, beautifully rebound in leather with gold leaf on the spine. The bloodstains had been carefully cleaned. The pages had been preserved, protected behind tissue-thin sheets. For Finn, Cashin explained. So he'll always know who his mother was, what she fought for, how brave she was. Sarah couldn't speak past the tears. The second gift was a stack of legal papers. I've added to Finn's trust, Cashin said. But I've also established something separate, the Isolde Harrow Memorial Fund. The interest will fund the school in perpetuity. We'll never have to worry about money. Girls from Wiltshire and beyond will learn to read and write and dream, all in your sister's name. Cashin. Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. She saved you, which means she saved me. I want her remembered the way she deserved, not as a victim, but as someone who loved fiercely and died protecting that love. That evening, after the guests had left, the three of them stood on the balcony together. A family now, officially, in every way that mattered. Finn yawned and asked Sarah to tell him about his mother. She was brave, Sarah said, pulling him close. And kind. And she loved you more than anything in the world. She used to sing to you every night. The same song her mother sang to her. Can you teach me the song? Sarah's voice was thick with emotion as she sang the old lullaby, the one Isolde had sung, the one their mother had sung before that. Cashin's arm came around her shoulders. Do you think she would have liked Papa Cashin? Finn asked when the song ended. Sarah looked at her husband and smiled. I think she would have loved him, because she wanted me to be happy. And he makes me happy. I hope I can make you both happy, Cashin said. For a very long time. Finn yawned again, dramatically. I'm sleepy. They put him to bed together, moving through the routine they developed over months until it felt like they'd been doing it for years. Sarah tucked the blankets around him, kissed his forehead. Cashin did the same. Good night, Mama. Good night, Papa. The words hung in the air like blessings. Then, finally alone in their chambers, properly theirs now, the marriage consummated in every legal and practical sense. Sarah and Cashin looked at each other. So this is it, Sarah said. We're married. Having second thoughts? Not even one. Good. He pulled her close. Because you're stuck with me now. I can think of worse fates. They kissed, and it was the beginning of everything. Not the end of the story, but the opening of a new chapter. One where ghosts were laid to rest, and the future stretched out bright and uncertain in theirs. On Cashin's desk, a letter lay open, from Fletcher in prison, thanking them for mercy, saying he could finally sleep knowing he'd done one good thing before he died. Beside it, a note in Sarah's handwriting. Things to teach Finn this year, reading advanced texts, writing independently, how to be brave like his mother, how to be kind like his father, how to love without fear. And on the wall, a portrait newly commissioned, Isolde, Finn, and Sarah as children, painted from a sketch Sarah had drawn from memory. Isolde in the center with her arms around both, all of them smiling, frozen in a moment before tragedy, preserved in love. The past honored, the future open, the ghosts finally at peace. Snow fell over Ravenscroft Hall exactly as it had 1 year before, transforming the Wiltshire estate into a palace of ice and amber light. But this time, when Seraphina Ravenscroft, Duchess of Ravenscroft, descended the marble staircase with Finn at her side, there was no silence. There was applause. She wore burgundy again, a deliberate choice, a reclaiming of the color she'd worn when she'd walked back into Cashin's life. But this gown was richer, more confident, embroidered with gold that caught the candlelight. On her finger, the sapphire engagement ring sparkled beside her wedding band. On her head, a small tiara that marked her as what she'd become. Finn walked beside her with the bearing of a young gentleman, though he was still only 8. He'd grown in the past year, taller, steadier, the nightmares coming less frequently now, replaced by dreams of ordinary childhood things. He smiled at the guests as they passed, no longer the frightened child who'd clung to her skirts. Cashin waited at the center of the ballroom, exactly where he'd stood a year ago when the world had stopped turning. But his expression was different now. No shock, no pain, only pride and love and something that looked like peace. He extended his hand as she reached him. "Your Grace," he said with a small bow. "Your Grace," she replied with a curtsy. And then they were dancing, and the ballroom spun around them in a blur of silk and candlelight and music. Sarah felt the weight of eyes watching, but it didn't matter anymore. Let them watch. Let them whisper. She was done hiding. "Happy," Cashin murmured against her ear. Impossibly so. The guests who approached them throughout the evening were a mixture of the curious and the genuinely pleased. Some who turned their backs now offered stiff congratulations. Some who judged harshly now admitted they'd been wrong. Lady Pemberton, who'd written the cruelest letter, even gave Sarah a nod that might have been respect. The biggest surprise came midway through the evening. Rosalind appeared. Sarah hadn't known she'd be there. But there she was, looking elegant in pale blue silk, with a handsome Scottish lord hovering attentively at her elbow. Lord Malcolm Fraser, Sarah learned, heir to a Highland estate. And the way he looked at Rosalind, with genuine affection, perhaps even love, made Sarah's heart lift. "You look well, Your Grace," Rosalind said when they met by the Christmas tree. "As do you, Lady Rosalind." Rosalind glanced at Cashin, then back at Sarah. "He's happy. I can see it. So am I." "Good." Rosalind's smile was genuine now, not bitter. "That's all I ever wanted. For someone to be happy. It just took me a while to realize it didn't have to be me." She gestured to Lord Fraser. "Malcolm and I are to be married in June. In Scotland. Small ceremony." "I'm very happy for you," Sarah said, and meant it. "As I am for you." Rosalind touched Sarah's arm briefly. "He was always yours, you know. I just borrowed him for a while." "I see that now." They parted, not friends exactly, but no longer enemies. Lord Fraser led Rosalind onto the dance floor, and Sarah saw the way she laughed at something he said, the way her face had softened. Everyone deserved happiness, even in the ruins of scandal. Later, Cashin pulled Sarah aside with news. "The school. The Isolde Harrow Memorial Academy. What about it? 40 girls enrolled now. We've had to hire 2 more teachers. The vicar says it's changing the village. Girls who would have been servants or seamstresses are learning Latin, mathematics, history." His eyes were bright. Isolde's legacy is growing. Sarah's eyes filled. She would have loved that. "There's more. One of the girls, Martha, daughter of a blacksmith, she's shown remarkable aptitude for mathematics. Thornton thinks we could fund her education at a ladies' college in London. First of many, perhaps." "Oh, Cashin." Sarah pressed her hand to her chest. "Yes, absolutely yes." As the evening wore on, Sarah felt dizzy and excused herself briefly. Cashin followed, concerned. "Are you ill?" "No. I—" She drew a breath, hardly daring to say it aloud. "I think I might be with child." Cashin went very still. "You think?" "I'm not certain. But possibly. Probably." She looked at him, trying to read his expression. "Are you a baby?" Wonder filled his voice. He laughed. actually laughed and spun her gently. Sarah, he set her down carefully. I'm overjoyed. Are you happy? Terrified, she admitted. And happy. Both. They returned to the ball holding hands, and Sarah felt the future opening before them like a door. Not perfect. There would be hard days, challenges, moments when the past rose up, but they would face it together. Near the end of the evening, Finn found them by the Christmas tree. Mama Sarah, Papa Cashin, look. He held up a small carved ornament, a train, delicately made from dark wood. Sarah's heart clenched. Finn, I made it. With Mr. Andrews, the woodworker. It's for Mama Isolde. So she's here too. For Christmas. Cashin knelt beside the boy. That's perfect, Finn. She would be so proud of you. They hung it on the tree together, and for a moment the three of them just stood there. A family, imperfect and hard won and real. Then Finn yawned. Sleepy. A little. They took him up to bed, moving through the familiar routine. Sarah tucked him in, kissed his forehead. Cashin did the same. Good night, Mama. Good night, Papa. I love you. We love you too, they said together. Very late, when the guests had finally departed and Finn was asleep upstairs and the house had settled into quiet, Sarah and Cashin found themselves on the balcony where so much had happened. Snow fell softly, covering the gardens in white. A year ago, I was terrified, Sarah said. A year ago, I was a ghost. Cashin pulled her close. And now we're alive. Both of us. Do you think we'll always be this happy? Cashin was quiet for a moment. I think we'll have hard days. Moments when things aren't perfect. But we'll face them together. Together. Always. They looked out at the snow-covered gardens, at the estate that was now truly home, at the life they'd built from the wreckage of the old one. Inside, music still played faintly. Finn slept peacefully, safe and loved. Isolde's memory was honored in a school where girls learned to read and write and dream. Malachi was on the other side of the world, his schemes ended. Lord Aldrich was dead, his title stripped, his crimes exposed. And Sarah and Cashin stood together on the balcony where they'd first confessed their love, where they'd kissed in the snow, where they'd chosen each other against all advice and wisdom and propriety. The snow continued to fall over Ravenscroft Hall, covering Wiltshire in white, as it had 1 year before. But this time, the purity wasn't ironic. It was real. A blank page. A new beginning. And in the warmth of the house, a family slept peacefully, knowing that the ghosts of the past had finally been laid to rest, and the future, uncertain, beautiful, theirs, stretched out before them like a road they would walk together, hand in hand, for as long as love would carry them, which, they both suspected, would be a very long time indeed. Wait, don't close this video yet. I need to tell you something, and it's going to make you uncomfortable. But you've stayed with me for 2 hours, so I think you can handle 2 more minutes of honesty. You just experienced something most people will never see. Not because they're not looking for it, but because you, yes, you, the person listening to this right now, you're about to make a choice that determines whether they ever get the chance. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, this video has been watched by thousands of people. And do you know how many of them liked it? How many subscribed? How many left a comment or shared it with someone who needed it? Less than 3%. 3%. That means 97% of the people who just experienced Sarah's courage, Isolde's sacrifice, Finn's testimony, Rosalind's impossible choice. 97% of them are about to close this video and give nothing back. And I know what you're thinking, but it's free content. I don't owe you anything. You're right. You don't. But let me ask you something. If you were Sarah, if you just spent 6 months hiding in a barn, stitching gloves until your fingers bled, terrified every day that men with sketches would find you and finish what the train crash started. And if you'd walked into that ballroom knowing it would create a scandal, knowing half of society would call you a liar and a fortune hunter, knowing you might fail and lose Finn anyway. And if you'd stood in that courtroom and read your dead sister's diary aloud, exposing her fear and pain and final prayers to a room full of strangers, would you want someone to acknowledge that courage? Or would you want them to walk away in silence? This story took me 3 months to write. 3 months of research, of crafting each character's arc, of making sure Isolde's diary entries would break your heart and put it back together. 3 months of writing and rewriting until Sarah felt real, until Cashin's grief was palpable, until Finn's testimony would make you cry. I gave you 2 hours of storytelling that I genuinely believe is better than most published novels. And I'm not asking you to pay for it. I'm not asking you to buy anything, sign up for anything, commit to anything. I'm asking for 5 seconds. 5 seconds to hit a like button and tell the algorithm, this was worth my time. Show this to more people. 10 seconds to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. 30 seconds to leave a comment. Even just, thank you, or this was beautiful, or I cried. So other people scrolling by see that this video moved someone, that it mattered. That's it. That's all I'm asking. Less time than it took Finn to climb into that witness box. Less courage than it took Rosalind to testify against her father. Less sacrifice than Isolde made when she threw her body over her son and died to save him. But here's what kills me. Most of you won't do it. You'll close this video. You'll move on to the next one. You'll scroll TikTok or check Instagram or start another YouTube video. And this story, Sarah's story, Isolde's story, the story I poured 3 months of my life into, will die here. Will reach only the few thousand people who've already found it. And everyone else who needs this story? Everyone who's being told they don't matter. Everyone who's fighting to protect a child. Everyone who needs to believe that courage wins and justice comes and love survives tragedy. They'll never see it. Because you didn't click a button. Now, I know some of you are feeling defensive right now. You're thinking, this is manipulative. This is guilt-tripping. I don't owe you anything. And you're absolutely right. This is manipulative. I am trying to make you feel like your inaction has consequences. Because it does. But is it more manipulative than the algorithm that hides good content because it doesn't get engagement? More manipulative than a system that rewards clickbait and punishes quality? More manipulative than a world that tells you consuming without contributing is perfectly acceptable? I don't think so. I think I'm just being honest with you about how this works. And I think you're better than the 97% who watch and leave. I think you're the kind of person who gives back, who says thank you, who understands that nothing is really free, that someone, somewhere, paid for what you just experienced, and the least you can do is acknowledge that. So here's what I'm asking. If this story moved you, if you felt anything at all over the past 2 hours, hit the like button right now. Not later. Not, I'll come back to it. Right now. Because you won't come back. You know you won't. If you want more stories like this, if you want to see me spend another 3 months crafting something this good, then subscribe and turn on notifications. Because I can't keep doing this if only 3% of viewers engage. I can't pour months of work into storytelling that dies at a few thousand views. I have to eat. I have to pay rent. And if this video doesn't perform, the algorithm buries it, and I can't justify the time it takes to create this quality of content. That's the brutal truth. And if you know someone who needs this story, someone who's grieving, someone who's fighting, someone who's been told they're powerless, someone who needs to believe that walking into rooms where you're not wanted and demanding justice is possible, is worth it, is what courage looks like, then share this video with them. Copy the link. Text it to them. Post it on your story. Send it in a Discord or Slack or wherever your people are. Because stories like this don't spread by accident. They spread because people who care make them spread. So what kind of person are you? Are you the 97% who take and leave? Or are you the 3% who give back? Are you someone who watches Sarah walk into that ballroom, watches her fight for 2 hours, watches her win against impossible odds, and then walks away without even clicking a button? Or are you someone who says, this mattered to me. Thank you. And other people need to see this too. The choice is yours. And whatever you choose will tell you something about yourself. Something true. Something maybe you didn't know before. So choose. Like, subscribe, comment, share, or don't. But don't lie to yourself about what your choice means. Now, if you engaged, if you liked and subscribed and commented, thank you. Genuinely. You're making it possible for me to keep creating stories like this. You're making sure more people get to experience what you just experienced. You're part of something bigger than yourself. And if you didn't, if you're about to close this video without engaging, I hope the next story you consume for free makes you think about what that costs. Not just for the creator, but for everyone else who'll never get to see it because you didn't care enough to click. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying. And whether you engaged or not, whether you're part of the solution or part of the problem, I'll see you in the next one. Now go. Be brave. Be like Sarah. Be like Rosalind. Be like Isolde. And maybe, just maybe, take 5 seconds to prove you actually mean it.